Party people, what's happening with you? It's another Thursday. You know what that means. It's another Truth Project. It's your boy Grape Juice live and in the flesh with Dion, Luke, and the crew. First and foremost, we are so excited that you're with us for another week, another study. You know how I roll around here, man. This is not a normal, your ordinary, typical Bible study, man. We diving into real topics, diving into real struggles, tension, complicated questions that need nuance. And there's so many perspectives to take a look at it. And we welcome yours, your worldview, your thoughts, whatever it is. We want you to bring it to the table for tonight's conversation because it's going to be nice. It's going to be a good one. And as you can tell by the title, we're going to dive into some really, really good stuff. And so please, man, invite somebody in here. Shout out YouTube, Twitch, which we are live across the board. Welcome in. Shout out to you people out here, man. Listen, we do have our Ninja membership that we are giving out for the free as we're live right now, man. So check it. You don't even got to check us out to the same capacity, man, because you're gonna have even more content. Okay, more content that's over there from live streams, beat stream replays, you name it, they got it. Exclusives only on Maverick.tv. We want you guys to get your Ninja membership live right now. We got beautiful people in the chat in the Maverick.tv who are willing to gift, who may be in the potential to bless you with a whole membership, man. So you guys be sure to check that out. It'll be live and available as long as we're live here. Not too sure if we're going live full time here just yet. But I'm sure the longer we go, the more we'll figure that out. But you'll have access to get it while we're live over on YouTube and Twitch. And so be sure to do that. Man, I definitely want to get some interaction from you guys, man. What you guys looking like for the Super Bowl? Who y'all got in the Super Bowl, man? Wild card has some interesting things to say. What y'all got for the Super Bowl? Who y'all think gonna win it? I am so curious. Drop it in the comment section. I want to see it. Shout outs. Nope. Oh, I thought I was about to give a shout out in the Twitch chat. Shout out to all the 9 people in here, man, who out here lurking. We appreciate you so much. Bills, Niners. Ooh, Ravens, Niners. Ooh. Oh, y'all cooking, huh? Okay. I see you. Cool. How PD feel about the... No, we don't want to talk about them Cowboys, man. We don't want to talk about them. No. Ravens over Lions. Interesting. Man, shout out to the man. We appreciate y'all, man. Shout out. All right. So we're just going to dive right into it, man. We're not even going to hold y'all up like that. Raiders. He said Raiders. Shout out to FiOG. Bless your heart. Shout out to FiOG in the YouTube chat with that one. So what we're going to do is we're going to pray into this. Shout out T Timbo in the Twitch chat. He says Ravens, Lions, and Ravens win. Okay. All right. He said, how mad I feel about them Eagles. Man, y'all trying to come for next, huh? Well, listen, we're going to get into this discussion. We appreciate you guys for joining in. Let's pray, dive into this, and get straight to it. All right. Lord, we thank you so much for another opportunity to just get closer to truth and to just spend time with you and to interact with one another. So we just ask for your wisdom, and we ask that you would sit with us this evening, that we may encounter you in in-depth conversation with one goal in mind, to get to you, get to truth. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey there, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Truth Project. On behalf of Dion, Luke, Grape, and myself, welcome in. Do me a favor, tag somebody, tell them to pop in here. And if you haven't yet joined with us permanently on this side, make sure that you do. You can do that right now and be able to jump in with us here and on the Discord and get into our daily conversations that we have there on the Discord. Listen, I've got a question to ask you regarding God's righteousness. Is God ever unrighteous? That's the question I want to ask you today. Is God ever unfair in his actions and the way that he deals with us and the way that he even expects us to deal with other people? Let me give you for example. When the Bible tells us that we should forgive those who despitefully use us, is that a righteous thing? Also, when the scripture tells us that God hates divorce, does that mean that a husband or a wife has to stay in an abusive situation where they're being beat, belittled emotionally, mentally, physically, relationally, financially, whatever it is God unrighteous in that, saying that he hates divorce and things along those lines? Does this make God a God who is not in touch with the human condition? And how is it possible for us to do something of that magnitude, recognizing the difficulty that comes with dealing with a scenario like that? That's really tough. Like, how do I forgive somebody who took the life of somebody that I love? How do I forgive a drunk driver who paralyzed a friend of mine? How do I do this? And are the expectations that come from the text unrealistic? And if so, tell me how. And if not, also tell me how. Let's get into that conversation and talk about it.
Boom, man. We got a good conversation in store tonight, man. I'm glad that you guys were able to catch that intro. Again, shout out to everybody who came through. Please invite somebody, man. Send a link. Let people know, man. We live all over the place: Twitch, YouTube, and of course, Mavic.tv. Be sure to go grab your Ninja membership while we're live over here. Man, just to kind of give some like really, you guys join the, oh, yep, shout out Baka in there. What verses are we going to be going over? Yes, sir. Shout out y'all in the YouTube chat and Twitch. Man, it's going to be a plethora. Okay. Hopefully you guys kind of caught a few in the intro video. I think that one of the things that I think is important as we kind of break this off and begin is really trying to establish what it means, or I guess what we're trying to get to is establishing what does righteousness look like, right? A standard, all those kinds of things that we'll get into. So we have to be able to get there before we can kind of start seeing, okay, well, is God's like expectations just too much, right? And of course, I guess another preliminary prior to that is trying to see what we're comparing to make that claim. And so I kind of wrote out a few things here, and then from the video too, right? He mentioned divorce. Okay, he mentioned marriage. He mentioned forgiving and loving your enemies. I also wanted to add one more because obviously it's a pretty big one in our culture. When you think of no premarital sex, like God got all these standards, God got all these rules. Like it's just crazy to expect that we could ever live up to this. Like what in the world are we talking about here, right? So many different ideologies and thoughts that even you'll hear Christians like use to put as a certain rule standard. Maybe it's an extension to what scripture says. If you think about Old Testament law, okay, you even had that in the Bible, Pharisees and Sadducees who would take laws and extend them or any kind of thing, right? To make a standard greater, make it out to be as if like living for God is just, you know, you got way too much expectations over here. We don't even got it like that. And then as we usher through the video, we kind of see, therefore, it almost feels like God's unrighteous, right? God just like don't make no sense. And that's why I can't really trust him, can't really follow him because he got too many rules. What am I supposed to do? And so I want to kind of give even a bigger picture behind that, too. Kind of pulled up some statistics just to kind of bring to the conversation. Shout out to any statistical nerds in here, which actually was kind of interesting. The more that I looked into it, and obviously, I wanted to start with the premarital sex deal because that's a pretty big one. Obviously, you guys hear all the social media stuff that we do, from Red Pill community to your Fresh and Fits to your Rollo Tomasi, K, to all your guys out here, man, that are pushing a narrative for men, especially, right? Men, you know, while you're getting your bag, getting in shape, you need to be sleeping with as many women as you can. All those kinds of things to get prepared for the life you want to live later down the line. And if you ask me, okay, and not looking to step on your toes, but it could, I think it's a reverse of what they are calling out women for in a lot of ways, right? But if you look at this statistic here, just to get a glimpse of the expectations that maybe you feel God has on humanity, or the Bible has on humanity, the scriptures have, that's just like, bro, it's outdated. This don't even make sense and is unrelatable. According to the analysis by this, actually, I believe this was from about maybe 2006, 2007. So again, it's a little older up there, but just kind of run with it, because not run with it, but just kind of listen into it, because I think it does have some really good connections even to today. So this stat reads this, that by age 44, 99% of respondents from this study had sex, and 95% had done so before marriage. Okay, so this was taken, looks like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I see it, yeah. So by age 44, out of the people that were taken, 99%, 95. Here's the other one. Even among those who abstained from sex until age 20 or older, 81% had premarital sex by age 44. Okay, so this is actually a research statistic that's used quite a bit when kind of looking at sexual statistics and premarital sex, how many people are engaging in it. It doesn't really give us the information on like how many people were in this study, but it does give us a wide general kind of thought behind how many people are engaging in that, how regular it is, and even to the point of the expectations it is. Okay, if you actually listen to, again, going back to your social media influencers, I actually just edited a quick clip where there's an individual, if you guys know Fresh and Fit, one of them, he was like, yo, like, women don't want a guy who's inexperienced, and you don't want a guy who doesn't have any experience in the bed and in relationships. And so, you know, if the guy really wants a shot, he's got to get experience. That means he's got to go hit up women and get laid and all those kinds of things, right? So all these things that are spit out as like expectations around culture. So when you see that and you compare it to the Bible that talks about, hey, that's for the marriage, that, you know, the marriage bed should be undefiled. You look at that, and of course, from a cultural perspective, you might be like, yo, what the heck? This is a little outdated. It's a little shaky. Need to get with the times, because this don't make sense. Let's talk about forgiveness. Okay. Now, forgiveness in some aspects, according to studies, not only has a positive influence, like we would suggest, right? You have lower anxiety, lower depression, your health is better. People who forgive more tend to live better lives. But if you look at it from other studies, there's a specific article from NCBI. It's a pretty renowned study research catalyst, I'll call it. But they kind of point out that there's some negatives to it. And one of them being how in the psychological space, you're giving permission for the behavior to be repeated if you forgive more times than not. And so we have to deal with that tension. Okay, well, Jesus and the Bible, scripture tells us to forgive, turn the other cheek, love your enemy, pray for those who despitefully misuse you. But I'm trying to figure out how I can do that and not give way for the person to continue making the same offense to me, especially if the forgiveness isn't really taken in the best light. So how do I navigate that? Is it even possible to navigate that? Right? Is that an expectation that's fair, that's legit, or is God just too much? Okay. Also want to talk about divorce. Divorce is also one of the things that we thought about, right? We see scripture says God hates divorce, but if you go back in scripture, right, throughout Old Testament, specifically the book of, I want to say, don't quote me on it. Nope, I'm not going to use it. We'll come back to it. I'll figure it out. But there is a book in the Old Testament in the later prophets where the people of Israel were married to all types of foreign lands and foreign countries, foreign people, creating families and all that kind of stuff as they were being brought back, or not being brought back, but they were not exiled from the land of Jerusalem. So you had a group of people who were exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon, and there were people who were left behind. And the people who were left behind were kind of creating a world and life for themselves, and were marrying people and all those kinds of things. And so the individual makes a decree that, hey, you need to split and divorce these people and stop with all this nonsense. But yet we read later on in these same sets of prophets, major and minor, that God hates divorce. So how do we navigate through that? How do we navigate this idea that God doesn't like divorce and there's abuse? and mistreatment and misuse in marriages and relationships. So again, the questions that were raised in the video, does that mean that we stay in them? Does that mean that we just have to suck it up? Does that mean that by me staying with this person, even though I'm never treated right, I'm never treated in love, the marriage vows aren't honored, hey, I'm honoring God, even though I'm, facing severe consequences physically, emotionally, spiritually in this space, right? How do you navigate that? So many questions that I would love to get you guys' thoughts on, that I would love to kind of just pick your brain and all those kinds of things. But I think, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, and it's kind of where I want to end my little beginning rant here, is that I think in order for us to get somewhere with this conversation, we have to acknowledge what is being assumed in the question. Okay, is God righteous or is God unrighteous for such things? Is the standard legit? And I think if we're going to establish it, here's what's being assumed rather in this context, is that there some way, somehow, could be or possibly is a standard that's greater than what God sets. Okay, that's the first thing that's kind of assumed in such a question. Because a lot of times the energy that's came with this kind of thought is like, well, why I got to follow that? Like, that don't even make sense. It's illegitimate. You're expecting me too much, man. Actually, half the rules he got, I'm already broke. So don't that disqualify me from even following and even obeying and even living for this God? So, yeah, I think the way I'm doing life, the way that I'm doing things, the way that I've done it so far, hey, I haven't been put into jail. I ain't killed nobody. Ain't nobody that got caught up by me. I ain't got no kind of trouble like that. So, hey, my life is pretty cool. Okay, so there's that perspective of thinking that maybe your own standard is better, thinking that the societal standards are better, and you're better off living by those thoughts, right? That's kind of an assumption that could be made behind the scenes. What about righteousness? Okay, what definition of righteousness are we establishing this conversation by? Are we establishing this by a principle of truth or a principle of opinion? Right? Are we establishing this by, hey, your truth versus my truth? Or are we coming to not just a collective agreement, but an agreement that is based on logic, based on reasoning, right? Based on evidence, based on consistency and coherency, right? Where are we establishing this level of righteousness? Who gets to define that? Do we as humanity get to define that? Does society get to define that? What about the societies that are outside of the states, outside of the United States? What about if we went overseas and went to third world countries and we saw how they navigated and how they moved? Would we then say, hey, like this is, right or wrong? This is okay. This meets the standard that God has. How do we navigate through that? And then finally, I think the last question that I think I have on here that I would really love to know, because I think a lot of this connects in some way, shape, or form. When we talk about forgiveness, the three things that were kind of highlighted majorly in this video. When we talk about forgiveness, when we talk about loving your enemies, praying over them, even when we talk about divorce, premarital sex, all these things that in some way, shape, or form, love is either supposed to be present and isn't, or is a factor by which these things first began before it reached the end result, right? Before you started hating a certain person, you may have once been close friends with them. And then something happened where that rift took place, right? So one thing that started out as love ended up being a form of hatred. Divorce. I mean, I don't really think people come to an altar in marriage and have divorce in mind. I have a hard time believing that a lot of people do that. Man, I'm gonna divorce her in about 3-4 years. I don't think that's ever a part of the plan. So something that first started off as loving, well-meaning, ended up something that was very crucial, very devastating, rocked your world, changed your life forever, right? Even when we talk about the actions of sex, like what is sex about? The purpose of sex, words and phrases that are used to even engage in sexual activity, right? I love you, those kinds of things. Trying to run game even, right? You don't even mean it, but you said it because you knew what you was going to get at the end of the day. Like, what is that measured by, right? When we talk about love in and of itself, from the three examples we brought up, what is it ultimately measured by? What is the standard? What is it? What is the perception? Is it all based on me, or is it based on something outside of me? And I think when we ask ourselves these questions as we navigate through this conversation, hopefully we're able to kind of get to a place where we see and answer the question regarding standard, principle, boundaries, parameters, that then gives us room to give a good, coherent thought to whether or not God is asking too much. Like, I mean, when we really think about it, us as humans, his creation, telling the creator he's doing too much, does that make sense? Is that legit? And we love to know why, if you think, you know, it is or isn't legit. You know, is that really how we ought to move? So let's talk about it, man. I'm excited. And D, if you have any thoughts, man, I know I kind of ran it a little bit. If you had any thoughts, let's chop it up, man, for sure. You're muted.
Yeah, my fault. Maybe we get into any questions, but nah, I thought you did a great job opening that up.
Cool.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting too, man, because I've been going back through this series, man, my pastor did called the Good Life series these past couple weeks, man. He went through the Sermon on the Mount. It's been beautiful just re-listening to it. And this was actually it's so interesting. This is a great time. He covered the forgiveness part and self-condemnation. Anybody, I know you raised a question in the chat if anyone is struggling with forgiveness. That's a major thing. You know, a major thing. And so I definitely want to get involved with you guys. Let's look at this. Oh yeah. Shout out to everybody in the Twitch chat, man. I'm checking in, making my rounds. What up to Eli Smells Good in the Twitch chat? Shout out to you. Bowie Ja Gaming. Shout out to you. He said, are you capable of doing a backflip? Heck no, sir. Then he asked, can y'all explain to me what we're talking? Yeah, man. So, man, listen, if you're new, this is a typical Bible study that we're doing every Thursday, but it's not your average. Okay. Diving into great, impactful conversations every week. Tonight, we're just covering the topic of, does God expect too much out of us? Okay. Forgiveness, marriage, sex, love, what's expected of us as humans to live right, do right by each other. Is it too much? Is his expectations too much? And maybe a good question, maybe for you to rest on, for you guys in the chat, anywhere. Maybe this good question, man. Do you struggle with forgiveness? I think that's a good spot to potentially park and kind of open this up and go one by one. Anybody in the chat, man, struggle with forgiveness? Matter of fact, I'll do it this way. Put a 1 in the chat. If you Twitch, YouTube, Maverick.tva, if you struggle with forgiveness, put a 1 in the chat. If you are, in a good place with forgiveness towards yourself, towards others, receiving forgiveness from others, put a 2. I'd love to hear it. Let's see what some interactions are. And did you want to kind of go the whole time on both ends, or?
Yeah.
Okay, yep. Cool. All right, cool. Man, look at y'all getting a free treat. Yeah. Okay. Yo, okay. Shout out your mom. Sometimes I can't forgive my mom cheating on my dad. So he's at a 1. Okay. Heard you.
That's
you for
real.
Sure.
We appreciate that.
That's real. Absolutely. Glad to have Mobbin back in the chat, man. Shout out to him over at Maverick.tv. Let's see here. Anyone? No, he's not, because there would be no real without him. So he's as realistic as it gets. Hey, shout out Glitch for that thought. Absolutely. I like that. How would you, we'll break that down later. I don't want to add too many questions. Still waiting on you guys. Okay. Keyshawn at a 1.
If you got a thought, Todd, share it.
Yeah, please do. Back here in the Twitch chat, no updates there. Okay. So it seems like it's kind of more, I'm seeing more 1s than 2s in the chat. So what is it specifically, man? To you guys who dropped a 1 in all chats, what is it specifically that you guys are struggling with when it comes to forgiveness? What aspect is it? Is it psychological? Is it emotional? If I could kind of give more examples behind it. Psychological, like it just doesn't make sense to forgive. It doesn't make sense to really buy into whatever story is being told to receive or give the forgiveness. Maybe it's emotional. Are you still maybe perhaps hurt by what took place? You feel too betrayed to man, I can't even get to that place. What do you think it could be? Maybe if it's towards yourself, do you feel you're undeserving of it? Right? Do you feel you haven't earned it? Do you feel forgiveness is something that you must earn? I think that's a good question. I just love to kind of get you guys' thoughts on those who dropped ones. Ty says, with forgiveness, I think it's easier to say you are not going to forgive someone until we are the ones that want to be forgiven. And with forgiving people, I put myself in their shoes and ask what I want to be forgiven. That's a really good thought. I think in a lot of ways, that's how Jesus puts it. Right? Like, when we talk about throughout the Sermon on the Mount, man, Jesus actually, in the verses that are following the anger that Jesus deals with, right? Anger in your heart, not just, committing acts out of anger, right? We don't just want to stay away from that. We want to actually deal with it in our hearts. He's like, if you come, actually in that biblical time, you come to the temple, give a gift, leave a gift, and you realize that someone has an issue with you, something against you. He's like, man, you need to go take care of that. He says, leave your gift where it's at and go handle that, because God cares more about people, right? And the relationships that we carry with one another than, anything that's done out of a ritual basis. And even so, when we get into the Lord's Prayer that we renownedly know in Scripture, right? Forgive as he's forgiven you, right? Help us forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, right? And so there's some connection throughout the scriptures of, man, if we're going to be willing to receive forgiveness from God, we must also be willing to give forgiveness to others. And so it's like, well, dang, I mean, but you talk about some of the huge extremes, right? Somebody losing their life, a lot of extreme loss that are at massive deficits, due to people's actions that you were affected by and you didn't even cause. Like, how do you, what? So you look at that, it can get crazy. And so, but I think you would be on a good path there for sure, in terms of maybe even how Jesus puts it. Your mom, man, yeah. I would love to hear more of maybe kind of what specifically are you struggling with behind the unforgiveness portion for that. But I'll form a question out of that, D. How would you advise somebody to go about that, man, dealing with forgiving a parent, a spouse, even for, betrayals in those kinds of ways?
Yeah, to me, I think it comes down to like the foundation of how we look at this game of life and really the purpose of forgiveness, unforgiveness. Like, I think sometimes, and I would ask the person like why they struggle specifically, like what is it? Is there a specific story you have in your head? Maybe I can speak to that specifically, but I can share from my experience. I was very unforgiving. I used to hold on to grudges. And I feel like I could like cut people off for life and be cool until I realized that I really wasn't. And that I was actually trying to pull up a James Allen quote because I love what he has to say about forgiveness. Let's see. Right here. I don't know how much of this I want to read. I think I'm gonna read this whole paragraph. It's like 4 sentences. Listen. He says, the remembering of injuries is spiritual darkness. The fostering of resentment is spiritual suicide. To resort to the spirit in practice of forgiveness is the beginning of enlightenment. It is also the beginning of peace and happiness. Hear this. There is no rest for him who broods over slights and injuries and wrongs. No quietness of the mind for him who feels that he has been unjustly treated and who schemes how best to act for basically the revenge of his enemy. He was throwing some big words out there. And I think that really, really hit me, and it helped me understand that one, forgiveness isn't something that God has me do, even at the core of it, for the other person, even though it can help another person if you were to forgive them. And he doesn't do it for me to get into heaven like I'm doing him a favor. Like, God doesn't need me to forgive anyone or forgive myself. He doesn't need it. It's actually for me. And when I really started to understand like how pain works, like I used to think that other people made me mad, sad, or would hurt me. And then you start to understand that now that's something you did. It's the stories that you create. And when you can have an understanding, when you can have a view of reality that allows you to hold your life almost so lightly, because it's hard to forgive when you take yourself too serious. All right, I'm gonna back this all the way out just because here's an analogy I use a lot. I wish I had something close, but like imagine we're playing a board game. No, let's do another. Let's say we're doing 2K. We're playing NBA 2K, and Grape has his avatar that he created. I feel like some of us, we get to take in life way too serious to where we think that we are that 2K avatar. And this might sound crazy to some of y'all, but it's my backwards path to get into forgiveness. Like, we got to understand that you are bigger. Like, for me to look at Grape and to call him, even call him by his government, Sean, like that is such a small and puny way of describing the being that's on the other side of this Zoom call, because God knew him before he was born. He's going to know him and an experience after he dies. And this idea of Sean is something so tiny that his parents came up with. They're like, let's call this ninja Sean. We twisted it. He has nicknames. We call him Grape, and we put little labels to that, right? And he has a certain look, and we try to box him in by that. But Grape is actually bigger than that. Like, Grape is playing a game that's bigger than even just his life, or else we wouldn't believe in a life after death. And when you can understand that, and you understand this game of life in the sense that the Bible talks about a new heaven and new earth, and that is just like when you play 2K and you play it for a year and then the game's over and then you start a new one over, like everything from that past 2K is irrelevant. Like, it doesn't do anything for you. The only benefit is any benefit that you made outside of that game. So if you made friends playing 2K23, that goes on after 2K23, but everything inside that world of 2K23 is over. It's done with. And so the point of your experience can't be all wrapped up in 2K23. And if we want to get really deep, no one here plays 2K or any video game for the sake of playing that video game. They play it to feel a certain way on the inside. And I'm using all of this wording just to show you guys that there's something bigger than this everyday life that you see, and you are bigger than that. And that is the reason that Grape, let's say I were to start roasting his 2K character, he's not going to take that as personal. I mean, some people will, right? And then you almost, and we laugh at that. We're like, bro, that's not really you. I can say your 2K player is ugly. I can say he's short, whatever, but that's not really you. And if you start crying over me roasting your 2K player, we'd almost think something was wrong with you, because you need to have this disconnect, because that's not really you. And I think that's a lot of what Jesus is saying. And that's why Jesus is trying to tell us that this kingdom is internal, and that if you cling to this life, you're going to lose it, because it's like, yes, you need to steward your body. You should care about the people around you, but not at the sake of losing that bigger game. And when you can do that, right, it gives you this looseness with Dion as my character, right? Because he's not that serious that I need to take. I don't need to take him that serious and hold these grudges with the world around me. And then I can start seeing that character more like Jesus talks about, as a window for heaven to get into earth. And so I'm not asking myself in every situation like, yeah, what does Dion want, right? Grape might roast me, and I might want to hurt Grape's feelings, right, personally. But what might God want to do in that situation? And when you care so much about your avatar above everything else, you can't do that. And it wasn't until I started to let go and really meditate on some of the things that Jesus was saying, I zoomed out a little bit, and I could see that, and then a lot of what James Allen was saying made sense. That, hold up, that unforgiveness, that pain, whether it was unforgiveness for myself or towards someone else, it was as real and as heavy as I made it. Like sometimes I thought that if I were to forgive someone, they would be free from what they did to me. Little did I know, one, sometimes they were already free. They didn't even know I had all this resentment towards them. Two, even if they did know, sometimes they didn't even care. And then as I zoomed out, I realized I'm not the judge of life at that level. Like, to just hold this grudge over someone and say, no, you can't be forgiven of that. That's not my role in life. And when I started to look at people like God looks at people, I started to realize, man, sometimes people's biggest mistake leads them to God. And with me holding on to forgiveness and grudges and throwing hate at them, all I'm doing is, one, pulling myself further away out of God's presence. And I'm just causing more turmoil in their life. And so, and we can talk about this. If y'all got questions on this, please fire away, because this can be tough to hold at first, because it doesn't feel good. It feels like you're going to be losing if you were to approach this. But what I'm actually trying to say is, this is the most powerful you can be. The most powerful you can be, because I see so many men that are like, I'll never love again. I'll never trust this girl again because they might do me like that. Well, I'm saying, when you adopt this, you can love like Jesus loved. Jesus was like, yo, I'll die for you, whether you accept it or not. Because he would, and when we think about it from God's perspective, which is way easier, he doesn't need anything from anyone, anybody. He's already maxed out. But he's trying to invite us into that same thing. He's like, yo, when you live like I'm trying to tell you to live, you don't have to have these little puny fights and these little disagreements and these things that you hold on to. But at the end of the day, what do they get you? Like, for real, some of us that have held grudges with people for years, I want you to speak on it. Like, what has it really done for you? And we'll say that, oh, it protected me from this or protected me from this person's that. Like, unless it's like actual physical, like someone's giving you uppercuts, you got to understand that pain. So if Grape were to say something about me and I were to say, that hurt my feelings, Grape didn't have something that left his mouth called pain and then hit me and then inflicted it. It was the story I told myself about what he said. And so that even the pain is internal. And so you wonder, and then all it does is it closes yourself up, and you think you're saving yourself from other people, but you're really just closing yourself from love getting in and causing that endless torment that James Allen was talking about. And so that's why Jesus tells you to forgive, not because the person next to you need it. He needs it because we need it. Because when your heart is open, you can see life for what it really is, be that conduit for God to flow. And that's when you're your most powerful. Trust me, men, I used to think I was powerful because I would correct everyone that would say anything bad to me. Like, and before, like, I got online, I had a pretty good track record. Like, off the top, there might be someone who was hooping or something, but I just can't remember a long list of people that got away and punked me. But then I got online and it was everywhere. I was like, bro, I don't even feel tough no more. I feel weak because I want to do this in my day. But then you start barking over here and now I'm giving you all of my attention. And then you're barking over here and then now my whole day is about you. And it's like, that man isn't powerful, at least not from God's perspective. That's a weak, distracted boy just bouncing all over the place because he feels like that's ego. That he's got to just protect that 2K character to the death. And as I started to zoom out, I stopped taking offense to as many things. I stopped taking everything personal, and I realized, okay, I was actually able to show up in relationships with power, because typically you need someone to act a certain way for you to be loving, for you to show them respect, for you to be caring. That's not powerful. That's not the power that God shows. God's like, yo, I'm who I am. I'm going to love regardless of how you move. And that's what I think you get to tap into when you zoom out. Woo! I said a whole lot. Did that make sense? Great.
Absolutely. Sense? That was fire, man. That was fire.
If y'all got questions.
Yeah, I like that. No thoughts in the Twitch from that. I think your mom kind of came back. He mentioned the only way he can express himself or his feelings is through playing football. I think that's something that I want to touch on, kind of like in response to that, because I think in a lot of ways, bro, like that, what you said was just that was really good. I think one of the things that I think I've seen myself be so, it's such a relief, not even necessarily in a space of just giving forgiveness in the sense that somebody has done me wrong all the time. But I think just realizing the essence of what makes up forgiveness, right? Like this aspect of grace and mercy, love, like understanding. I've taken a whole fresher approach because I've applied it in my life. I've seen it in my life. I've walked it in my life. But when Proverbs speaks about two passages that come to mind. Proverbs 4:7 says, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get it, and with all you're getting, get understanding. Then you see Proverbs 14:29 that says, one who is slow to anger has great patience. That was phenomenal for me because as you mentioned, a lot of examples. I know I was a 2K head, Madden head. I used to spend all my time like, I wish a ninja would send me a message after he just got rocked as I'm on a 10-game win streak on the court and pull up. I put the game on pause. The sticks were down. I was in my seat. I'm typing every word possible. This dude's saying everything out of the world. I'm like, yep, bet. I'm just going back and forth. That was me. But one thing that I noticed how I actually got to see this actually may have happened. This was actually during the Christmas season. So I was playing the game. I had my mic on, or not even my mic on, just a headset on. I could hear homie just across me. He was hot. We was playing Madden. My first time on in quite a bit. And he was hot, man. He was calling me all names in the book. Y'all know how Call of Duty lobbies go. Yeah, I could tell he originated from there. Brother had that all in his veins. But all I could do was laugh. And there was a part of me, the biggest challenge was, okay, I was playing the game. I was like, no, I'm gonna stick around and I'm gonna play and finish the game to win. Here's the dilemma though. This is why it's so important. I had a bedtime. I got a bedtime, y'all. I don't got time to be sitting up here sticking on the game all night. But I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna step out of order to finish this game. But the reason why wasn't because I was having all the fun in the world, wasn't because I lost track of time. It was because my ego was screaming at me. Not only am I not going to let this ninja win, but he going to hear from me after this game. I'm going to send him a message. It ain't going to be that crazy. I ain't got that kind of mouth on me like that no more. I let that go. I'm going to just be petty. Hey, you fought hard. You fought hard, right? Just be annoying. But long story short, man, I ended up quitting out the game third quarter so I can make the bed on time because I was like, you know what? Not only am I not going to care about this game come the morning, like there's nobody in my circle that's going to care that I won a Madden game where Buddy was talking trash, right? Like nobody's going to care. That's number one. But then number two, it was a lot of the words that he was saying in there that typically would trigger me to be like, man, no, I got something for you. I got that. I got you. Got your N word. I hear you. But there was a part of me that was like, I was just laughing, smiling, because I knew, even though I didn't know him, and I don't know that person on the other side, I don't know where he is, where he's from, I don't know. But just by how he is approaching this game, how he's approaching how seriously he's taking it, I can hear that he has a very limited perspective on what's in front of him and what's around him in this regard in the game, just the game specifically, and that he lacks understanding. And I think for a lot of people, when they lack understanding, there's certain expectations that we just can't put on them to act and live and do life a certain way that's optimal and beneficial, not just to them, but for those around them. Where am I going with this? I think with forgiveness comes a ratio of mercy, grace, and understanding. Giving you mercy and grace because it's been given to me. Grace is goodness that's given to you that isn't deserved. Mercy is withholding something from you you do deserve. They may have deserved the lashing out. They may have deserved the response. They may have deserved the long text back, whatever. They may have deserved it all, but we withheld it back because in a lot of ways, again, from the Christian worldview, like I deserved punishment. I am a walking red flag, as Deanna brilliantly put a few weeks back. We're all walking red flags. And on top of that, like I'm worse of a sinner than I even think I am. just like in the presence of God, right? And yet I'm alive. I got breath in my body, and God has graced me with a gift and opportunity to glorify him every day, despite my wrongdoings. And so thinking of that into consideration, and then also thinking too, like, you know, if only you understood what you were doing, if only you understood why you were doing it, I don't know if you would consistently move like this. You know, if you actually knew what the reason was, and better yet, how to navigate it. And I think, and this is kind of where we have to step out of the selfishness, as Dion alluded to. But what it does is it causes us to drop that selfishness and ego. And sometimes we just don't want to do it because we need somebody to blame and something to hold on to. But as you continue to walk into that, you'll realize, like, dang, like, I don't even want to have mercy. I don't even want to have grace. I don't want to, because I know that I'm in the right for feeling the way I do. I know that I should feel this way. But in actuality, man, it's possible that the people that I'm trying to hold this against, just maybe there's a story behind their life where the actions that they're doing, like, that all stemmed from something that had nothing to do with me. I was caught in the crossfires. Yep. It hurt. Yep. I didn't deserve it. Nope. It's not fair. Nope. But when I look into their life potentially and ask questions, man, a lot of that stuff comes from deep places, deep wounds that weren't healed, and places where things just weren't understood. Now, that doesn't mean I have to continuously stand by it, but it does give me understanding and context to how and why we even got there, you know, and that is what helps us to see, like, dang, like, I'm sorry that happened to you, you know, and we're able to respond with that compassion, the same compassion that we would want responded to us if we were, as I believe it was a Ty that alluded to it, that, you know, as Ty mentioned, like, if I was in your shoes, I would want that forgiveness, you know. And so I think it's important, man, to get understandings. I think when you do that, it's not to say that I agree with it. It's not to say that I'm on your side about things. I still think what you did was wrong, low down, dirty, foul, and they didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve that. But I'm wanting to extend something to you for you to continue moving forward, and for me especially to continue moving forward, to be able to release that and live a life that maybe I thought I wasn't going to be able to get back because of the offense that happened to me. And there are egregious offenses, y'all. Egregious. I'm talking like people who have been sexually molested, talking about, I need to forgive the person that did it. I mean, there's some serious stuff. And I think we've talked about it before, man, and I won't bring it all up because there's a catalog of conversations. But when you talk about process, you know, sometimes we think forgiveness just has to be immediate. Like, it has to be like right then and there, man. Sometimes, but that stuff take process. It'll take time. You know, that it really does. It takes time to get to that place where you can genuinely hear that person's name and no longer cringe, and no longer be so trigger happy to get mad at the person who brought them up. And it takes time, man. I think that's a healing process that we all endure in some case or scenario due to what's happened to us. But I think we got to be willing to be in that process when it comes to forgiveness. And so when I think about it in that aspect, is you know, again, is God's standards too much? And I just want to touch on this too, because you mentioned your mom on YouTube, man. You mentioned how, let me see here. You mentioned, oh yes, sir. I see you, Project Black. Again, your mom. You mentioned the way you express your feelings is playing football. Man, I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that, man. And I know for me, I used basketball to get away from mine. Not even necessarily from this extent of unforgiveness, but just like, if I was ever caught up in my feelings, I'm going to the gym. I know where that ball at. I ain't going nowhere. That ball in Fresh Kobe's, man, I'm straight. But it was so interesting because every time I came home, every time I laid my head down and I was alone with my thoughts, it was there. No matter how long I stayed in the gym and no matter how long I did it, man, it was still something that came back. And something that still resurfaced my mind. And so I think what a question I would ask you in that space is, what has that done for you? Like, in the bigger scheme of things, if we zoomed out, what has that done for you? Has playing football become such a centerpiece to your life that if that were taken, you have no idea
like how you would even navigate through those emotions and thoughts. And I think answering that will let us know that whether or not football's actually helping. Like, is it actually dealing with it, or just a thought? Is it massaging the wound? Is it kind of giving it a little bit of cushion for the moment, a distraction even? Because a lot of times in those spaces, we aren't really in a space where we can say, I'm ready to deal with the emotional aspect of things. And that requires us reflecting on the issue. That requires us sitting with the issue. That requires us sitting with the emotions and feelings. And then that also deals with the paradigm of what we think about our emotions and what we think about our feelings. Like, maybe you were never given the permission to feel those things. Maybe you were always told that being a man, you weren't supposed to feel those things. You weren't supposed to let that stuff show, because that's a sign of weakness, right? So we also deal with those paradigms in the mix of it. And it's a lot, and it's a lot of work to do. But I think if you really think of it from a bigger perspective of things, from an eternal perspective, long-term perspective, man, how much freer would you be if you dealt with that now compared to allowing that to fester up and turn into something even deeper later down the line that would even affect your future family, future children, those kinds of things. And I think the beautiful thing about unforgiveness, so not the beautiful thing. Well, I'll say this. The beautiful thing about making the decision to forgive is that it can stop with you. Like unforgiveness can stop with me. It's ran through the family. It's ran through people I'm close to. Everybody I'm around, they talk a big game. They don't move in that space, but I know it can stop with me. I know I have the power to make a decision to say, I am going to no longer move with such a hard heart and no longer extend and be willing now to extend love and grace to people, man. I'm very good at football, and as freshman, I got Division II offer, and I was super happy. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So you see some of the results, right? So again, I think we're going to continue digging into that, right? So if all of that was taken from you, man, how would you navigate through your emotions? That's my next question for you. Because we can get all the accolades, man. Like, we know, like, and check it out. And it's not even necessarily to strip you away from your accolades. First off, congrats on that. That takes hard work to get. So nobody is taking that away from you at any point. So please don't hear that. But I think one thing we see perpetually, every year, there's somebody somewhere in some major league, basketball, football, soccer, baseball, that end up making some really poor decisions that not only cost them what they worked so hard to get at that level, but also cost them their family, cost them their loved ones, cost them a lot. And I think it roots back to maybe similar positions where you may find yourself at, where, man, like, I never dealt with that emotion properly. I turned to football. I turned to exercising that in a way in which, in a violent way, but in a way in which it was permissible because it was in between two sidelines. But like, anytime anybody would come close to threatening that, man, I would turn up, because that became my idol. That became something I worshiped. That became where my heart was. And it was a massive distraction. And you're not alone. Like I said, I can relate. If any of that seems relatable, I don't want to force that on you. I know for me, I can relate to that. Like, I didn't make time for many relationships and friendships around me, especially in high school, because I was really trying to get somewhere with it. Like, I really was trying to get to basketball, or, to higher levels in basketball. And of course, I ended up doing that after high school. They weren't the highest levels, but I got higher. But man, yeah, I ran to that court. I ran to that hoop, and all those things I ran from came right back every time. And it wasn't until I actually sat with it, dissected it, allowed myself to go through a lot of those emotions that I was running from at that time, where I actually received the healing I was looking to basketball for the whole time. the whole time. And so that's my kind of question for you, man. Like, how would you deal with your emotions if it weren't for football? And if it weren't for the success? If I lose football, it would hurt. But I know if I got Christ with me, I will be good. Okay, yeah. So I want you to ask the question though, or I want you to answer the question, your mom, because you mentioned earlier on that you have trust issues and the only way you can express your feelings is playing football. If you do not have football, how else would you express your feelings? No right or wrong answer. I'm just curious to know. Welcome to the Truth Project, baby. We dig. Because we want to be of service, man. We want to be of service, and we're all humans trying to make it work. And so, yeah, how else would you deal with your feelings? And if you don't know, it's cool. It's okay to say you don't know. Patrick Black, you say you have trust issues too. Man, I know Dion's got a good take on trust issues. I'd love for you guys to hear when he comes back to the mic. I'd love to hear. Oh, there he is. I'd love to hear, man. So we got some people that are referencing like they got some trust issues, man.
Trust issues, yeah.
Yeah. So
I got a good take on that. Remind me. I didn't even know.
What, brother? You had a fire one. So I'm gonna try to.
I don't know if you ever said that. Have you heard that? You seen that clip? How Lil Wayne don't be remembering his own lyrics?
Yeah. He said, I don't remember.
I said that.
Bro. Yeah.
What? But yeah, go ahead. What was I saying?
So man, you shared, we had a True Project well over a year or so ago where we kind of got on this topic, and it might have actually referenced to what you mentioned earlier, that sometimes what our trust issues root from people needing to be a certain way for us to love them. And right. So there's a struggle there. And so when we feel our trust is betrayed, what actually isn't our trust being betrayed isn't what's actually happening. What's actually happening is they no longer appear to be lovable to us because they aren't what we wanted them to be or what we thought they should have been for us in certain spaces and places. Right, and in actuality, maybe expectations were possibly the issue. And that might be trickier to deal with, especially maybe dealing with more personal problems like your mom and his issue with his mom. Like that might be a little bit different. But you know, with relationships in general, those are theirs. Hopefully that might have jogged your memory, or maybe where you could have gone.
Yeah. No, that was good. And who was it? Just so I know who I'm talking to. Who had the trust issues?
Patrick. So over in YouTube chat, Patrick Black mentioned it. We're still talking and navigating with your mom. He said he didn't know if he ever thought about it like that. I guess that might have been in reference to a question I asked him earlier. But yeah. Got it. Yeah. So, see, for those who don't know, man, you know, we have got a coaching program. We work with a lot of men, and just for my whole time I've been online, I've just like talking to people about their stuff. If y'all can really, really remember back, I've always thought I was some sort of life coach. I was always doing some sort of motivational content, and just as people would open up to me, I just love talking to people. So I got a lot of reps. I've seen a lot of things from a lot of different angles, and trust issues. Well, one, I like to define it because we got to get on the same page on what we're saying there. If you're saying like, hey, this guy has this white van and the side door is open, and he's like, and it says free candy with an arrow and lights next to it, and you're like, I'm struggling to trust that. I'm like, I don't know that that's bad. You know, if you're online and someone's like, yo, I got this course, you're going to make $1 million in 10 minutes. You just got to push this button. He's got to pay me $100, right? And you're like, I'm struggling to trust that. I don't think that's bad. I think logic, reason, all of that stuff is good. God is not mad when we don't get into the stranger's van to share them the gospel. I think, no, that's how you get raped, bro, and sex trafficked. And so if you're struggling in that area, I would just urge you to just kind of meditate on that. I don't think that's bad. Now, when you have trust issues and you're saying, hey, I have no reason to not trust this person outside of the pain that I have in my past, I think unknowingly, I think a lot of what Grape was saying previously just really gives you a new perspective that makes that a lot easier of a situation. And
how I like to say it is, one, we need to understand what good is and what evil is. Some people think evil is a thing. Remember, it's an absence of a thing. Evil is the absence of good. That's it. Just like darkness is the absence of light. And so you don't know where darkness comes from because it's not a source. It just shows up when there's not light. And the moment light shows up, darkness goes away. And it's the same with good. And so we got to understand that about the world. And then we got to understand cause and effect. And that you don't know like in this universe, we have never just been walking and then something just randomly popped up. And if it did like fly from somewhere, you know it came from somewhere. If you see an effect, you know there was a cause. And when we understand good and evil and cause and effect, when we experience evil, you kind of get where it's coming from. Even if we don't know exactly, we know, hey, the fact that you're showing me any type of evil, it's working the exact same way when I show any type of evil. It's coming from somewhere. No one just wakes up and is like, I'm gonna choose evil. It's because this goodness has been stripped from them. They've probably been through some bad things. Again, the greater the evil, typically the greater the event that someone has been through. And when you understand that, like we don't meditate on that enough. We just skirt past that. But when you really, really think about it, you start to feel bad for the worst people. And without fail, I want you guys to start doing some of this. Like the people that you know that act the nastiest, ask questions. And if they're a family member, some of you might already know the answers, or you can ask your parents. And it's crazy. I'll be on calls with men. They're like, man, my dad, he's a horrible person. He did this, I did that. I'm like, hey, tell me about what your dad went through. And they're like, well, his dad was horrible and he did this and he did that. And he's like, And then even on that call, instantly they start to understand their pops from a different angle. And when you catch this, you see how this is how Jesus was walking around. Like the people that all the religious leaders would be hating or think that God was far from or God was against. That's who Jesus was hanging out with. Jesus called a tax collector to join him and then went and had dinner at the tax collector's crib with all the other tax collectors. And that might blow past you guys. You guys don't really get that. It's like in that time, imagine we were all Jews, right? And we were enslaved by Romans. And like, let's say it was kind of like how the house ninjas or the ninjas in the field didn't like the house ninjas, right? Because it was almost like they got special treatment and sided with the enemy. It was the same way. It's like, yo, I'm gonna be a tax collector. Yeah. So I'm gonna help, Rome tax the Jews, and I'm gonna overly tax some of the Jews and make sure I'm good. And that's how I got rich. And so you look like that's not usually a good person. Like that side with the enemy, tax their own people for their own benefit. And Jesus was like, yeah, one of you join me, and then let's go to your crib and let's hang out. The religious people couldn't get it. They were like, whoa, why aren't you separated from them and only with the holy people? Jesus was like, because I get it. Where this evil is, it's the absence of goodness. So if I'm goodness walking around, where should I be? That's how you get rid of the evil. And so when you understand these two things, it changes fundamentally how you look at the world and how you look at the people in front of you. And you stop seeing the people that are the worst. Well, you understand two things. One, you stop looking at them as the scum of the earth and the worst people. You really start to understand them. And then two, you stop resisting them. Like you stop resisting them because you don't see them as something worthy of being resisted, and you realize they can't hurt you. Right? Like, and again, we still use logic, we use reason. And that doesn't mean you won't have things like you can't. For example, some people you might try. We got a new client who was with a girl for a while. I'm talking years and years, saving up for a wedding, and then just gets blindsided she breaks up and then she's with another dude like right after. I get how that's painful, right? And then these are the moments that where I think we experience God, but it's important to zoom out and realize the game that we're actually playing. And it's really easy to tense up and to react and want to attack her. And of course, build walls and be like, yo, I'll never do that again. But even on the call, I was able to see him reposition things and zoom out a little bit to see like, well, okay, all of the pain that I'm feeling, all of it is from inside. She didn't create it. The other dude didn't create it. It's all internal. And that gives a man his power back. It gives his power back. And you realize that, okay. It's not about what's happening outside of me. It's about what's happening inside, like on the inside, and the stories that I'm telling. And I love the grapes that it's a process, because you have to, once you start to realize that, you'll have to start working at it. But then when you think about it, you're like, well, man, it's tough to work on that when I don't have bad things going on. And then you're like, you almost start looking for bad things to go on. And then James starts to make a little bit more sense when he's like, yo, count it a joy when you might start facing trials and things start going on. Cause this is where you find God in motion, man, not reading the Bible, comfy, sitting on the sideline. It's when you're wrestling with forgiving your mom or your dad or your coworker or the girl that did you dirty. You have to wrap your mind around, you got to zoom out. But hear me though, once you get it, that's the strongest position on the board. Who can hurt you when you know that? And this is why we see Jesus moving the way he did. This is why the early church was able to do that, right? These brothers are getting stoned, they're getting beat, because they're like, again, just like my Elden Ring character gets stoned and beat and slaughtered in the game. I'm like, yeah, that's part of the process. Give me the XP. Because someone outside of the game, I realize it's not about Elden Ring. It's about the feeling I feel on the inside. And those guys tapped into God himself and realized that, yo, I'm playing a game bigger than me. And so when you can see the world that way, it's almost hard to have trust issues. You see your spiritual self having to walk into your spiritual closet and put on this heavy, like, think of like a mink coat or something, like just a heavy coat of like, to have trust issues, like that's you doing the work. That's not no one around you. And so hopefully I did it justice. Great. What you were thinking, but
heck yeah, you did.
Hopefully
man.
That helps,
you killed that. You killed that. I think, and I love just kind of even just reiterating, kind of following up from what you said, like, bro, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt and it doesn't suck, and that that you aren't going to feel that pain in those emotions. Like I can't imagine. I think one of the things that I've just been growing and being more and more gentle and merciful towards, man, like I've heard stories like that, man, like just out of nowhere, somebody that you were thinking about building a life with, things that were going so good. And then all of a sudden it just feels like it came out of nowhere and you're left in the puddle of pieces. And it's like, what do I do? And so that is normal. That is real. Like that's a real space to be in. And so it's this ain't no like cookie cutter deal where we're telling you that you need to get over it and you need to pray about it and let it be and let go and let God and all this kind of stuff. Like, no, like real talk, this stuff hurts. And it's a process you have to be willing to go through, healing. No, legitimately, healing is not linear. Healing is in milestones. You got to take time in those spaces. Some days you're going to feel like you're crawling, yo. Like days to get, like, I'm going to tell you, man, to get to the place where I'm at, where I have actually like learned what it looks like in a partial capacity to love. How I got there was through tears. Like I had to cry tears of frustration that I wasn't getting what I wanted, that it wasn't fair, that it wasn't something that I envisioned. But it was through those moments, man, that I grew, not because I departed from God, but because I yearned closer to him. And I think sometimes I think all the time, actually, that's what the difference is. When we go through pain like that, and anything relatable to that, we don't need to separate from God. We actually need to get closer to him. Because I think that's where the restoration starts and ends always. I was reading earlier in the week when Jesus walks on water in the midst of a raging sea. And there's so many things that we can take out of that text. But what's so beautiful about what happens is the first thing that Jesus says when he's on this water walking, and the disciples are trying to figure out what's going on. A storm is happening and they see somebody walking and they think it's just a spirit. But Jesus says, "Be not afraid. It is I." Like he announced himself encountering that space. And then he proceeded to invite Peter to trust him in an unfamiliar place. He invited him to trust him in an unfamiliar place. And Peter was just crazy enough to do it. And it was crazy until it wasn't when he was walking on the water. And I think a lot of times, man, that chaos that you might be in, that storm, that raging that we all love to compare it to, but that chaos, that unexpected circumstance, that unfamiliar territory, something that you felt blindsided you. Even in the midst of the anger, frustration, the fear, the uncertainty, the shakiness, Jesus never questioned the fear that they had in that moment. All he questioned was where their focus was. He was like, oh, you of little faith. But they didn't have little faith because they were afraid. They had little faith because of their focus in the midst of what they were afraid of. And so I think the encouragement there that I've seen and that I'm pulling out from this is like, yo, you put your focus on Jesus. You let him be the apple of your eye in those moments. And yes, you're still going to feel those pains, but as you continue to sit with him, those pains will ease. No questions asked. I don't have a timetable for when they'll ease, but I know they'll ease because he's there and because he's present. And when you invite him into your boat, the storm stills. That's just what happens. And sometimes you start out not knowing what to do, what to say, and all you've got on your heart is why me, and the frustrations that you have. But God leaves room for that, man. And so I just wanted to follow that up by saying that, man, like, yeah, that the forgiveness part, man, yeah, it's deep and it's a process, and you cannot force that mug. I tell you, you cannot force that mug. But just know that as you're able to let go of that, man, you're able to see God at a whole nother capacity, man. A whole nother capacity. So Timbo, yeah, go.
Oh, see, you gonna shout him? I was gonna shout out John in the Ninja chat. He said, going through this right now feels like I'm going in circles and just waiting for life to start back up again. I can definitely feel that, and I definitely want you to hear everything Grape said, but also I don't want us to think. I don't know that you're waiting on anything as much as I just want you to make sure, like, you could be waiting for the breakthrough to happen, almost like someone might be waiting to hit a new PR in the weight room, but that waiting isn't coming from not working. You know, they're working out every day, and then eventually that work is going to pay off. Make sure that's the waiting you're doing, because there's a lot of people that are just praying and waiting, and God's like, cool, do that, but move in motion. Like, are you thinking through things and actually trying to understand the situation and meditate on everything that we just gave you? Just like Grape was saying, you could be at the gym every day just trying to drown out the stories in your head, and that won't get you anywhere. So make sure you're putting the work, you're in your word, you're meditating on it, trying to understand, because everything we said might sound good, and then you go out and try to live it, it's a little bit more difficult. Mm-hmm. But and as long as you're working through that and not sitting back, I think you're fine. But
yeah, and community.
Yeah.
I always stress community, man. Yeah. Having somebody to talk to is massive, because you got to be able to get with somebody who has the containment where you can talk through those things, so you can get some kind of feedback and wisdom back, you know, and something to digest and continue to rest on. I tell you, there's a lot that has happened to me over the last 2 years, just as I've grown spiritually and emotionally, that, like, if I didn't have my accountability, coaching, mentor, I hadn't had these cats, man, what? I'd have been, oh my God, I don't know where I'd be, you know? And so it's great. It's great to have in those moments. So yeah, definitely appreciate you dropping that, John. T Timbo over in Twitch chat, man, he made a comment. He said, how can you deal with the emotions in the heat of a bad moment? Man, can I tell you I'll give you a quick answer. Maybe you have some other thoughts. I'd say remain curious, because you can't be mad and curious at the same time. So you're either going to allow your emotions to take you to a place of full anger where you're just going to go crazy on them, or you're going to remain curious And even as your blood pressure rises, when stuff is getting hot, or when emotions are getting wild and you can see that a situation is getting out of hand, you don't necessarily have to match that energy and match that passion. You can just be like, and over time, it's not going to be like that the first time. Like, you're going to have a lot of impulses to want to jump in it, but over time you're going to be like, yeah, I'm just curious. Like, no, I'm not trying to get under your skin. Please don't hear that. I'm not trying to do this. I'm not trying to do that. Like, reiterate and reaffirm, like, yo, I'm actually trying to see how we both can win here, because I want us to both win in this situation. Now, depending on what the bad situation is, like if it's just a heated discussion, argument, debate, right? Or something that was once a discussion and now people are getting wild up. Like, no, let's okay, hold on. If I offended you, my apologies. I don't look to offend you. I don't mean to offend you. I actually want us both to win here. So I'm trying to get to some kind of legitimate conclusion here where we both can walk away with this with something. And so let's talk this out. Let me make sure I reiterate my positioning, and I want to listen to where you're at. Like, there's a lot of that you might have to go through. So yeah, I mean, just giving people your full attention in those moments and being curious. I think that helps a lot, because you don't end up matching that energy. Any thoughts, D?
I think that was perfect in terms of like tactical in the moment. Something else I'll give you to consider big picture is something in our community we talk about a lot, is that passion always leads to suffering. And so we have a not as traditional take on passion. So if you guys go to manenoughchallenge.com, we actually have a free challenge you can go through, check that out, and you'll learn more about it. But in short, I've trained my mind to know that there's no time ever in the history of my life where I brought passion into the equation that it didn't lead to suffering. And so as I start to get really passionate about stuff, that reminds me to calm down. A mantra I've had for some years now is that big emotions don't need to equal big actions. For me, like when I was boiled up, people had to feel it and I had to act my emotions. They talk about acting your age or something like that. Like, I used to want to act my emotions, and it was like, if I was sad, it just had to be big and everyone had to know. If I was mad, everyone had to know. And that mantra has helped me realize that I'm not my feelings. I can be outside of them and observe them. The more you meditate, you tend to work that muscle. You can, what the really smart people will call you can work on meta awareness, which is just realizing that you're aware of your awareness. So think about your thoughts, right? You can catch yourself thinking about certain things, like that's thinking above your thoughts. And just the more you do that and work that, you'll be in that mindset, and you'll start to catch yourself. So with that mantra, I was realizing, emotions were big. All right, cool. I can realize that. I'm gonna give y'all two more mantras I've had. One is that feelings fade. You got to remember that, man. My feelings would be high and I would do something in that moment, but then the feelings would fade and I wouldn't feel that way. Like you eat a good meal, you take a nap, go to bed, or just sit still, don't do anything. It's crazy. And I think this is huge for people in relationships. Like when people do things to you, again, work, romantic, friendship, doesn't matter. Feelings may go high and you may want to react in a certain way. Like it's almost like a game. Like, when you get to a certain level, you get certain like unlocks and abilities. It's like when you get to a certain level of anger or sadness, new options become available that you would never do when you're calm. And so another one of my mantras is that the calm mind conquers. And so I'm always telling myself when the big feelings spike, it's like, one is going to fade. And I want to get back to calm, because that's the best way to see reality. Like this is something to meditate on. Sometimes we think we always see things for how they are, but that's not the case, man. We all know that there's biases that can filter things a little bit. For example, like there was Cowboys fans that y'all thought y'all were going to win and gonna make the Super Bowl. Y'all do that every year. It's so crazy. Even though everyone else in the league around you can clearly see it, y'all don't. Again, as an Eagles fan, I knew he was gonna choke. I saw it. Someone was asking how I feel about it, man. Everyone saw that coming a mile away. But Cowboys fans can't do that. So there's a little bit of bias that can creep in. This is why we want to try to do all that detaching I was telling you, because selfishness, it narrows your view, right? And the more we start allowing passion to come in, right? It's like as if you were to just make this out of focus. It's not doing it there. It's kind of working. And so the reason I don't want to be big mad, I want to give time for the feelings to fade, because I'll be making decisions with a blurry view of things. And so when I can get calm, I can see everything for what it is and people for who they really are. Like emotions get up, you'll turn on people that you really love. Like I've had thoughts up here that were like, oh, I can't trust this person's against me, and you want to take everything personal. And then when I calm down, I'm like, whoa, I actually don't feel that way. So what if I would have said that or done that when I was here? And so I think Grape gave you great tactical questions that'll actually help you get back to that and back to a lot of what I was saying. And then just try to see the world from that perspective of, all right, the more passion I allow in, the more I fog the view. And just because I'm big mad doesn't mean I need big actions. And the calm mind always conquers. Like the calmest person in the room is always going to have the best decision making. So great question.
That's a good thoughts. I also think too, you mentioned taking everything personally. I thought of the term hypersensitivity. Like people are just hypersensitive, man. Yeah. Like you can't take everything personal because everything's not about you. And I think a lot of times when we take things personally that much, we're moving selfishly and we don't even realize it. And sometimes sometimes again, when you think back to the football, I've been there. So I don't say this from a place of being higher than you or anything of that sort, because I'm not. Listen, the fun fact about me, I've been a huge Warriors fan. When the Warriors lost the 2016 finals, was up 3-1 and blew it, your boy shed a tear. Okay. Cause I was talking my crap to my homies and I knew I had to report back at that lunch table the next day and take all of that. I was not ready. Okay. I shed a tear, but I care too much. But I think in reference to that, if it's something like sports and things like that, I think there's a lot of times where you got to just zoom out and be like, okay, well, one, this conversation, this debate, this argument, it's not that important. Like, compared to the person I'm talking to and the relationship I'm wanting to build or I already have with this person, I want to value that more than winning this argument and winning this debate. So again, remaining curious, ask questions. I wonder why you think that. How'd you get there? But yeah, sometimes, and on top of that, you just need to get enough business. I just let me put it out there like that. You just need to get some business, put your hands to something, get in your own creative lane. I think when you get enough business that you attend to every day, you don't have time to care about things to that extent, because you recognize that there's more to worry about. There's more to put your thoughts to. There's more things that's requiring your energy. And you just don't have time to worry about who started for who and who's better than who and why I'm right and you're wrong. I just think that solves a lot too. So some extras there, but the good thoughts, D. I really like that. So Ty asked this a while back. He said, how should you go about asking for forgiveness? I don't know. I would love to maybe know more context as to maybe, like, do you think there is a wrong way to go about asking for forgiveness? Maybe that's where I would maybe curiously start. But I mean, typically for me personally, I mean, hey man, can you forgive me? Like I was, because I'm learning, I'm still learning, but I've grown a lot from this place where like, man, I just used to just like, because I always used to think that it was bothersome. Like I didn't want to be a bother to people, or, like, oh, it wasn't that deep. I would think it wasn't that deep, but maybe they did. And I was like, man, it's not that deep. I don't even need to do all that. And so I would just kind of walk around and not say anything. And then I would come back around and it was actually something that was necessary, And so for me, I mean, like if I was cutting up, and I'm better at catching in the moment. Like if I said something, I was like, you know what, man, my fault. Forgive me. I didn't mean that. That didn't come from the right place. So that's typically how I would go about it, just straight up like that. But maybe if there's a scenario situation you're thinking of where maybe it didn't go so well, we'd love to know. So fill us in.
Yeah, definitely drop that. And I like to just break terms down and see exactly what you're looking for when you ask for forgiveness. I would say most people aren't even asking for forgiveness. They're asking for, probably the word I would use is like restoration. Like let's say a boyfriend cheats on a girlfriend breaks up with him. And when he says, hey, forgive me, he's saying like, hey, let me back into your life. I don't believe that's how forgiveness works. I think she could forgive you and not take you back. And I think, didn't you say like there was a stat from like Psychology magazine or something about like if you forgive people too much?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up. I have the link. So basically they did a study where they were saying that psychologically, when it comes to people who have committed federal offenses or something like that, like forgiving them or something of that sort only seemed to give them more permission to do it again.
Got it.
Hey,
Yeah,
it's okay. Yeah,
right. And see, that's definitely like more like classical conditioning, that like animalistic side of our brain, and they're using. I'm glad you said like in a federal or like a legal sense, because they're defining forgiveness as like, okay, maybe not going to jail or getting you, or I'm sure like maybe releasing someone in that sense. And that's why I like to separate the two, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying someone could hurt your family member, you forgive them, and they spend, like if they kill your family member, they could spend the rest of their life in prison. Right? Forgiveness isn't even you saying, you could forgive them and they could be released or not. But again, forgiveness isn't like a releasing them of anything. Remember, it's something that you are going to do for yourself. And so when you're asking someone to forgive you, sometimes you guys have even experienced this where they're like, hey, I forgive you, but then they still act the same way. It's because they didn't forgive you. They let you back in and they let you close, but there's no real forgiveness, and they still have that mental torment going on, and that's why they can't be there with you without acting some sort of way. And so that's why I personally wouldn't ask someone for forgiveness. I would apologize if I made mistakes, and you know, if I wanted to be if I wanted to be restored in a situation, I would ask for it. I would work for it. Let's say I broke Grape's trust or something, and I wanted to keep that friendship, right, which is something I would try to go about that reasonably. One, if there was any sort of tension that caused that, or the thing that I did, I want to clear that up. And then I would do the things to try to build trust with him in that area. And even realizing, and this is where a lot of what we talked about before will help you guys in that restoration process. Because here's the thing. I may try to reach back out to Grape because I really want that relationship, and he might reject me and be like, no. If I take that so personal and don't even understand like why he might feel that way, I'll just stop. And I'm not saying get a restraining order or, move too aggressively, but I could be like, yo, man, I am so sorry. And again, when you adopt the position that I told you, you don't worry about, one, your intentions are usually pretty pure. And so one, you just don't hurt people as much. But when you do, it's usually an accident and you didn't mean to. And it's really easy to apologize. And you're like, bro, I did not mean that. I'm so sorry. Or even if you did, it's like, yo, this is what I'm doing to fix it. And he might be like, yeah, whatever, forget you, fluff you. Because of everything we talked about, I can understand like, yo, he's hurt. Like he's genuinely hurt. He feels that it's not coming from any other place. And then I also understand though, that I can give him a lot of data. I can show him things, but I can't make that decision for him to forgive me. And so even in my pursuing of that relationship, I can't let Grape hold my power. Any relationship, they can't hold your power, because you guys the point of life is not to die and not have anyone upset with you. Again, because you gotta understand, you guys gotta zoom out, y'all. When someone's upset, yes, you could have given them the picture and the evidence and all the things to do it, but you're not the one that's making them upset. They're making themselves upset. And so after I've apologized, after I've done the things I can to maybe try to restore something or make up for my mistakes, I don't chase the stuff. Like if they still want to hold on to something, I understand where it comes from. And so there's no reason to like turn it back or to be mad at them now. It's just like, man, I'm never going to resist that. If you want to ever come back and talk about it, there's nothing for me to even grasp to that. If y'all can see that, that's what I'm trying to say is like, forgiveness, they have to do. Restoration can come or go for me. I just don't wrap my life around needing. This has to go down to anything. Like if you say this with your wife, right? And I'm a married man. I love my wife, love my kids. If you even say this with your kids, like all of your power will be drained when those people aren't in your life anymore. And I think we see this demonstrated on one of the highest levels with one of the men that showed the highest levels of faith in Abraham, where he was about to sacrifice his son. Like anyone that has a kid, like I'm gonna tell y'all, that's why God waited so many more years to have me. Because if Dion was there with DJ, that chapter would have got fluffed up. I would have been like, nope. I would have messed it all up. So that's a tough thing to do, to be like, yo, I get, because what's really going on from God's perspective? He's like, yeah, there's a Dion, but there's something bigger than Dion, right? And there's something bigger than DJ. And so we need to have that looseness with our life. It's like, yo, if I call you to this place, into this situation, you should be going. And think about how willing we are to take our video game characters into places. Like, we don't want a peaceful, chill, easy life in our game. We want the enemies. We want the tough opportunities. That's where the biggest, greatest adventures and experiences happen. And it's the same with God. Like, we don't want to just sit there and be in the comfort zone. And so you can see these flawed, damaged people for who they are, but there also is an opportunity to love, to help them get a piece of heaven that they usually don't get from everyone else, because everyone else and this is bringing this is bringing heaven to earth. This is being ambassadors of Christ. This is on earth as it is in heaven. God said that we're supposed to have our posture of prayer. We will pray that, but then we get all these opportunities and we just bring more of earth to earth, and we meet violence with violence and hate with hate, and now all of these people are nothing but opportunities. But I got a little fired up, a little bit distracted, but
no, I love it. You kind of fired it up over here too, because even again, I've been a huge fan of just putting things in even deeper practicality, right? And so I think sometimes if you're in that space where you are trying to be restoration or forgiveness from somebody, like especially when it comes to betrayal of trust, man, because that's a big deal. I think a lot of this comes from, again, like we talked about, just understanding what they felt in that. You know what I mean? Like, man, it may not have been that big of a deal to me, but it was to you. And I want to be sure that I put myself in a very optimal position to understand that from your perspective, so I can go about this the right way. Because if I don't, I'm just gonna project. Girl, you don't care about that. Stop playing. You know. But then the relationship just continues to drift, because now she doesn't feel heard, or that person. It doesn't even have to be a she. They just don't feel heard, seen, understood. And they feel ignored at that point. And so I think one of the questions, this is the only thing I really had to add to that, is, you know, if you're in that space of betrayal, trust, you're trying to forgive and restore, like, hey, you know, obviously you offer your apologies, but it's more of like, man, what can I do here to restore this? You know, what is there anything I can do, and be willing. And this is it's a nuanced part. I don't want you to take it literally, but what do I do? And then I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And it's not necessarily saying, hey, I'm willing to murder people and do all this other kind of stuff for your forgiveness. Like, no, we're not going that far. And it's not even to say I'm willing to die over to get your forgiveness, to bend over backwards and to serve you and be a slave to you. Like, nah, we're not there for that. Because then that no forgiveness doesn't even really become something that's even offered genuinely, as Dion alluded to earlier. What I would say is, like, if this is, again, a betrayal of trust, when that person, let's take a romantic relationship, for instance, and again, depending on the relationship, it can be different. If you cheated on her, or she cheated on you, right? Like you, or something along those lines, like you want to be willing to be okay when she asks for your phone, and don't trip out when she does, right? Don't trip out and make it a big deal. Like, come on, you're not over this already? It's been 2 weeks. Like, you know, you don't want to put yourself in that position, because she's still processing. You know, she's still trying to grow that emotional connection back, because that was an emotional connection that was ripped there. And so she's trying to restore that. And so if she's asking for that, asking for the phone, wanting to see your phone, unlock the password, she's a little curious, like, those are going to come up. You have to be willing to comply with that. And you have to be willing to journey with her in that. and not rush her to a place where it's like, you should already be over that, bro. That happened 3 weeks ago. Like, nah, it's a process. And so sometimes with this forgiveness and healing journey that takes place, because that's ultimately what it can be, especially when a relationship is decided, hey, I want to restore this, right? As Dion alluded to, you have to be willing to say, I'm okay with the process here. And how, no matter how long it takes, I'm willing to go down this route. And I'm willing to restore this. And I think if that is genuinely there, then I think that's in a lot of ways how you do it. And again, with relationships, it's very different. With context.
And I think it's worth mentioning something that we kind of skirted past is that our decisions are in pen, y'all. And some things there isn't always restoration. And like you said, in the example of a cheating or being dishonest and a friend, there are things where, like, let's say we go back to that situation with Grape. You got to realize that he might not want to be a part of anything I got going on after a bad decision. And I think that's the beauty that we can learn from. And it's almost selfish, but I'm gonna be honest, man. I love when I'm reminded of how fragile life and leadership can be when I see like leaders fall, man. Yeah. And I'm not saying that God did it for me or anything. I just try to learn from it because it's like, bro. And I see other men that think that they are untouchable, that they can't make mistakes. And so it reminds me, I think one of the biggest shocks I had is one of my pastors at my actual church. We kind of have like a mega church. He got exposed for some wild stuff. He was like using some of the church funds, going over places and like getting spanked, like that weird kind of sex where he's like chained up and stuff like that.
Snap.
Yeah, like the dominatrix type stuff. And so that, like, you know what I mean? It's one thing, but like he looks like a chill little like conservative little pastor. And I had met with him so many times. Like, this brother knew the word easily. I'm not even gonna hold easily the coldest pastor on the whole staff, like in terms of preaching. And I was like, whoa, because it was like, this brother knew the word. Like, this is a guy I would ask to meet with on the regular because he would break things down for me. And he still failed. He fluffed up. And it's a reminder that sometimes we can get into a comfy place where we think things are hidden, or just that people won't find out and that we've just mastered it. And I think sometimes, whether it comes from our own decisions, that we just got to sit there and be like, wow, I really messed up. I'm going through this pain and I'm not able to get my way out of it. I think, like, and that's me, y'all. Like, y'all know from watching Among Us or some of the things, I'll finesse my way out of situations. But I've been so grateful for the times in my life where I've messed up and I couldn't, like, oh, I can't just get out of this, or, you know, because I had to sit with that, like, oh, wow, like, my decisions really are in pen, and there are things that you could do that you can't march back. And so let's learn from the ones we've all already done. And sometimes that's the grace of God when you have some of these smaller ones and God limits your growth so that you can learn at a lower level. Because, you know, the higher you get, sometimes the farther the fall, the more pain and stuff like that. And so, and just to make it a little bit more practical for you guys, yes, not just, all right, let me not do bad stuff, but we got to realize, where do actions come from? Or more so, I'll say the consequences. Consequences first, they come from actions. Where do actions come from? Actions come from the thoughts. You didn't ever just randomly did something, okay? One, for your arm to even move and all that, your brain's firing. But think about just the decisions you make. They come out of certain mindsets and modes of the mind, these habits of the mind that you sit into. And it's these thoughts that you constantly feed. It's the inputs that you're allowing to come in and warp your thoughts. They eventually lead to actions. So want to be careful, because there's a point where after I've done a certain action, I can't control the consequences. I can control my actions. And to a point, I can control my thoughts. But once I've done it, they may forgive, they may not, they may come back. You may go to jail, you may get acquitted, right? It's just, you can't control that. And so because of that, we want to realize it starts with the thoughts. This is why we go to the Truth Project. This is why we read the Bible, and we're meditating day and night, trying to transform from the inside out. And that's how we change our circumstances. We got so many guys fighting with the world around them at a circumstance level. And it's like, brother, No, that's not where it starts. You got to change the mind, change the thinking. That changes the actions, that changes the circumstances. And so let's all meditate on that, man. Some of us might be playing around with some vices, with some people. We got, I like that you use the analogy of the actual phone. Some of y'all know if your girl were to go through your phone, there's be drama. And let's be real, man. The chick you messing with or whatever really ain't even that dope. If you were to lose it, like, it wouldn't be worth it. And I don't even want to just zoom in on that relationship. Some of you guys are, what I like to look at is sometimes like life sentences. Like when people get the life sentences and you just see them break down. Again, I can't think I've ever been close to like committing a crime or anything like that on that level, but that just hits me. And it's like, bro, some of these are young guys and they're hearing them getting multiple life sentences and they're just like, it's becoming real to them. When they was doing all the stuff from the music videos and the rap stuff, it was cool. It was dope then. But now when your boys aren't around and your life just got thrown away, it's like, boom. Woo! Like when I watch those, the bass drops in my heart, and I go, I feel for them, man. Because I'll tell you this: I think there's something that's sobering about all that. Hopefully for all of us, because sometimes as men we make excuses for the things we do, and I'm not saying that pain, trauma, all that isn't real. Like you know, it could be like pornography. It could be something you tapped into early. Like, I get that, live that. Some violent things. Like sometimes it's because you had some people do some fluffed up stuff to you. But if you were to die and go to heaven or get that life sentence or get that disease that's uncurable, I'm confident that in that moment, you'd be like, dang, if I could go back in time, it wasn't an impossible fight. I didn't have to knock that chick down. I didn't have to knock that door down. I didn't have to open that tab or text that girl or keep that girl on the side. It's like, yeah, she did something for your ego. You had her on her phone. It was whatever. And if you were to get caught and your family would be gone, like real consequences, I don't think you'd be like, but my childhood and my trauma, you'd be like, nah, I could have fought that. I could have did better. I could have put my better foot forward. I could have fought it earlier. Even if it was going to be a journey, like Grape said, I could have started earlier. I think about that a lot. Like with the things that I'll struggle with, I'll be like, yo, if I was in front of God and he took my life and he'd be like, yo, if you go back, could you right some of them wrongs? Could you not be up so late as a workaholic and get in with your family? Right? Was any vice really that strong? Did it really have that kind of grip on you? And I'd be like, nope. Can I go back? You know? And so it's like, why wait? Because I do know if I do die, he ain't doing that. At least I never heard of those kind of deals. That might be something he'd do under the table, but I don't know that. I can't bank on that. And so I want us all as men to meditate on that, man. We only got one life. And some of us are just playing with some of the wrong things. So, right. Last thing I said, so just meditate on your decisions, man. We're talking about forgiveness and how to restore. Sometimes we just need to not. One of my favorite quotes is, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And that spoke to me because I used to like to do I'd ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And I was like, I'll just finesse my way. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, whatever. But sometimes, and there's scripture for this too, but it talks about like, instead of just offering all these crazy sacrifices to God, just be obedient. Just be obedient. Right. And I think when we can live in that, that's where God wants us. Of course, he'll take the forgiveness. Of course, he'll take the sacrifice, the repentance. But it's like what he's trying to get you to do, again, not to be obedient for him. It's not like you're an annoying toddler and he's got God is patience. God don't need none from you. He's trying to do that for you. The obedience is for you to live in that most powerful, peaceful place and make the best decisions and thus have heaven on earth around you, better circumstances, because you're not constantly moving in passion and causing suffering. Okay, take this mic from me, Great.
That boy got that fire. And I think, again, it ties into the conversation, right? So when you think of all that we've talked about in tonight's conversation, if you haven't listened to it all the way, when you catch the replay uploaded, catch it. Like, does this make it? Does this make the scriptures unrealistic? No, I think what it does do is it makes it unsettling. And it's unsettling, and that's okay, but it's unsettling because of our selfishness and ego. right? It's not because God is unrealistic, because when we really sit with it, no, that actually makes sense in so many ways. So I just want to throw that in there, but good stuff, man. I love that. I wanted to quick go to the YouTube chat. Royalty, yes, we are gifting memberships, man. We got some people that are ready to bless you, G. Exclamation point ninja in the chat. I don't think the link is popping up quite right now on this side of things. I'm not too sure. Exclamation point ninja in the chat. Hopefully it might pop up after that. You just click that link. You can actually get your ninja membership for free right now because we're live over on YouTube and Twitch. But we also got people who are gifting, man. So look out for that. Shout out to Baka who gifted, or I don't think it's a gifted in the chat yet, but he has offered some gifts over in the Twitch. So I love it, man. Shout out to you, Baka, for sure. So we're going to get to Keyshawn's question, and then we got one more on Twitch. And then, man, if you guys got any last second questions, get them in, because we're going to wrap up here soon, man. We definitely, man, God is taking this in an interesting way. So I'm loving it. I'm here for it. So, oh yeah, let's go to Keyshawn's real quick, and then we'll go to the Twitch for last. So Keyshawn asked this. It was actually in reference. Someone living proof. Let's go, John. Yes, sir. So Keyshawn asked, this is actually in reference to his context with the lady from the Baton Rouge that we've been talking about in our coaching calls and things like that. He asked, should you continue to ask for forgiveness if the person on the other side will not let it go? I think you might have hinted at this a little bit earlier. But I think if someone's not willing to let it go, man, I think that's more on them and less on you. In the simple fact that, again, it's like something that they just can't get over, or something that they're not willing to consider. Like, I can't force somebody to consider what it is that I'm presenting them. I think anytime we try to do that, we run ourselves crazy. I think your responsibility in forgiveness, whether it's giving or receiving, is to not just be open to that, but to grant it if asked for. And I think when it comes to issuing forgiveness, what's crazy is sometimes we think that we're in some way, shape, or form, we feel like we're in control of that. Like we have the power or authority to reject somebody forgiving us, but it's like, that's not your position. Like, you don't have authority to reject the forgiveness of God and the forgiveness other people grant you, because at the end of the day, it was your offense that even initiated the necessity for forgiveness to be given. So because I'm the offender, I don't get to tell what the offended can and can't do, as we've talked about, right? So it's like, nah, I mean, if somebody offers that to me, I need to receive that. Now, again, does that always come with reconciliation? We've talked about that. No, it doesn't. Right? Like, somebody can forgive you, love you from a distance, and throw up the deuces. You can do that for others too. But I think in the terms of somebody that doesn't want to, man, nah, there's nothing you can do. It's kind of like, I don't think I have a good analogy off the top of my head for it, but I would just say no. That's going to drive you crazy, and it has more to do with where they are and maybe where their limited view is on things, on the situation, on what it is. And it has less to do with you. And so hopefully you could take that for what that is. Hopefully that helped. Did you have anything or?
Nah, that was beautiful.
Cool. So we're going to go over to Twitch real quick. So my homie, I believe, let me give a few shout outs, man. The Baller said, what up, Dion over there? He gave a shout out to you.
What up, fam?
Let's see. Long live 2K or long live 24K. Man, seeing Mav, I just remember all the H1Z1 days. Who remember them H1Z1 days, man?
Man, booty bandits.
He popped me, Dion.
Yeah, right.
So here's a question that was asked. It was a little bit off topic, but I think it can maybe go into maybe some spaces that we've talked about, just the inward reflection and things like that. So he said he was having problems with public speaking. There's times where he would like to help others or share his views, but he gets too nervous to speak up and freezes up. I might sprinkle a little bit just to give you an intro, D, because I know you've done more than me. But man, I tell you, I think one of the quickest things I had to get over, even in something as small as like a PowerPoint presentation, is just caring what people have to say. Like if I go into a room where there's 100 people seated waiting to hear what I have to say, and I make it my goal to make sure that each person walks away satisfied and enjoying what I said, I'm going to end up giving multiplicity of different speeches, because not everybody in that room is going to receive one thing I said, the same thing I said. There's going to be different tastes, different views, even something as small as I wouldn't have said it that way. I would have said it this way. It's not that you're wrong. I just would have said it a little differently. Everybody's got that. So what I need to do in moments of public speaking and sharing my thoughts, man, is just, okay, I really need to be set on, okay, is the information I'm sharing, is this something that needs to be said? Right? Is this something that needs to be said? Is this something that others will gain benefit from, whoever hears it? And is it standing on principles of truth? I think those are probably the three things I would ask. And it's crazy because like I don't really recall ever going into a space doing that, but maybe it's simultaneously I do it because I do studies, I put stuff on YouTube. Like I have to consider these things when I'm presenting that to people. Otherwise, it's just ridiculous stuff I'm putting out. So I think those are things that I think are really helpful too. Jesus is so amazing because what he would do, he would give a parable. And this is what he would say at the end. He would give a story to relate to people who didn't know. He would say, those who have ears, let them hear, and walk away. And he would explain the parable to his disciples, but he wouldn't bother trying to explain it to people who didn't, because I think oftentimes when it comes to what the information you're giving, the people who really want to know what that was about are going to be curious enough to dig into it. Whether it's asking you questions or maybe taking it home within closed doors and asking people questions about what was heard, what was said, like that, I think, again, is something that's out of our control as people who are sharing information to others or whatever it is. My job is to just present it. And I need to present it in a way that you can digest it. And so that, I think, is maybe more of the concern. So maybe I think the fear could be just from putting too much stock into what others could say, how you would be viewed, how you would be looked at if you were to say something a certain way. But I think if you always understand where your heart posture is coming into the space, more importantly, you understand what Christ is asking of you in that space to give, and you are not in the process of sharing what you're sharing, trying to destroy, talk down to, or belittle others that are in your audience, but you're trying to, again, present the information in a loving way. I think you're always going to have somebody who disagrees and doesn't like it. So I think that's just something we got to accept. And those who have ears, let them hear. That's kind of maybe what I would share to that.
That was beautiful. I think the only thing I would add is just that I think at the root of all that is selfishness. But what he said is perfect. Like that's tactically how I would go about it, how I would think about it. Because if you remove all selfishness, I don't think you'll be afraid. I really don't. Because on one end, you just aren't good enough about what you're talking about. Like, well, let me ask you, Grape, did you show up nervous to, and this isn't like the biggest audience or anything, but did you show up nervous today to the Truth Project?
I did not.
Yeah, I think, and neither did I. I think just because we're not trying to overextend here. Like, we're not trying to do anything outside of what we naturally are. And I think that's people that put a lot of time into this area. So we have a very solid understanding. We didn't just like memorize facts, but we've actually like walked our life through it and had real experiences, helped other men do it. And so we got a decent handle on it. And then when things pop up that we don't know, we just admit it, like, shoo. And we're very honest that like, this is a process of all of us on a journey to truth. And so because of that, and there's no selfishness in that area, one, we're not, because sometimes ego and selfishness would be like, hold up, let me speak on this topic when I don't really know it as much because I want fame, I want money, I want sales, whatever, whatever it may be. And you just shouldn't be. You should wait, take your time, understand. we don't need, everyone doesn't need to be a speaker, a teacher on everything. There's a lot of things me and Grape shut up about and don't ever plan to get up and teach and share. We just learn. That is what it is. And so it just you just understand that like your voice isn't needed everywhere. And so the areas that it is, okay, then you need to make sure, again, what Grape touched on is that you're really just afraid of what people are going to say or think about you. What's at the root of that? Selfishness. Like, and I got a lot of reps on this online because like Grape said, you can't make everyone happy. There's some people that think how I talk is cool. Some people think it's corny. Some people think how I dress is cool. Some people think how I dress is corny. It's like, I would do good things, like give money to homeless people. Some people be like, oh, that's dope. I want to be like you when I grow up. Some people like, you're only doing it because the camera's on. And I'm like, no, I promise you, man, like talk to this person, like, I really do this. No, I don't believe you. And it's just like, all right, why am I fighting for that? And then I realized I can't fight for that. That's how people take things at the end of the day are on them. And so I'm not selfish enough to think that it's my job to do anything grander than what I'm trying to show up to do. Or no, I don't think the world revolves around me. It's not my job to make everyone happy. And I'm not the final process in everyone's life. And so let's say I was doing something here where I'm trying to help you guys get some things. Some of y'all gonna get it, be a lot more forgiving, and it's amazing, right? You're gonna instantly start changing some of your relationships. Some of you guys, this was just a little seed, and you're going to take it, think about it, forget it instantly, and not even think about it again until your heart is broken and you want to go stab her. But you're like, oh, I remember that Truth Project thing. And you may not even come back here, but that might just get you to pause and go search for some information. And you go watch a whole nother sermon from an Indian man that God raised up and has a TikTok for you, right? That's just part of the process. And I realized that it's that same guy working in him that's working in me. And I appreciate that. That's a way easier process too. That's way less pressure. I don't got to get on a cross and die. I don't have to be the end all be all. I'm no one's savior. I'm just showing up and playing the role the best I can day by day. And that's success. That's winning. And so, yeah, just meditate on the fact that it's selfishness. I heard a car alarm, making sure it wasn't mine. But yeah, it's selfishness somewhere at the root of it. It's one of those angles, though.
Man, that was beautiful. That got me to thinking. Obviously Scripture says we prophesy in part, right? So like everything that we teach, man, like I'm never coming from a place of fullness. I can't possibly do that. We're talking about God, bro. So it comes with a humility too. But I also think, and you said something else too, talk from where you are. That is massive. That is important. Because that's where you have the most authority, where you are. So if you try to talk above that, you're probably going to run into some struggles, and you're probably going to lean more on quotes and other people's experiences compared to where you are. I've learned that I have videos up on my YouTube channel, like I'm pretty sure it was from 3 years ago. Like if you go back and listen to those, I'm trying to put something together. I'm constantly repeating myself. I'm constantly saying the same thing. And I can't really tell you what I'm telling you because I don't know. But it's a testament to growth. And as long as you're speaking from where you are, that's beautiful. And I also want to say this too, man, because it's possible that this could be there too. Like maybe you're underselling yourself on what you actually can speak on. Now, again, there has to be a balance and understanding to it. So I'm not saying like if there is something that you're speaking on that is above your pay grade, I'm not trying to blow your head up and tell you that you could talk on it. But what I am saying is that there are some things that we sell ourselves short on because we lack the confidence. We aren't confident enough in ourselves for what God has given us or what is in us to talk about it, right? Like we don't feel, I don't know, bro, I'm not too confident. I've dealt with this. I still deal with this from time to time. Feeling like I don't really have enough in me or on me to really speak to this in the manner that I think it should be. And I'll always refer to other people. And I think that's a healthy thing too. But, I think maybe that confidence piece is selfishness too, because you're robbing people of hearing what is necessary for them to hear. And at that specific moment, you have it. So if you have it, share it. You know what I mean? Like that, I think that goes a long way too. So don't let shyness, fear, or anything like that rob you of stepping into that space confidently. Because I think you can. I think if you do understand it, you grasp it. It's something that you've experienced. You can give tangible application to it. I think you should share it, and I think it could be a lack of confidence. And I think the way you build that confidence is just stepping into it. I've been telling people for maybe I would say maybe a couple months now, just because I'm living it and I'm seeing the fruit of it every day, even in the small things. Like, I don't know if I'm not trying to tell you that the fear will never go away. Scripture says that perfect love casts out fear, right? And so I'm not trying to tell you that it'll never go away. But I think some of us are waiting for it to go away for us to start doing something. And God's like, nah, I just need you to step into it. Do it afraid. I just need you to step into it. And even if you don't know how it's going to turn out, how people are going to respond, what it's going to look like, you don't know what things look like month to month. You're just kind of here for the ride every day. Be there. Because I think there's a lot that will come out of that will mold your character to become the person God can trust with what he's looking to give you later on. And if you can't do it now, then in the way that scripture would put it, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when a bunch of footmen or the horses are running with footmen, right? Run into the Jordan. I'm forgetting the whole scripture. I'm trying to remember the best I can. But he's just like, man, what are you going to do when bigger situations come about? What are you going to do when the moment requires your confidence or requires that of you and you just can't give it because you just haven't taken care of what's in front of you now? So yeah, I would think about that. Just consider a lot of what we shared along with that. So don't want to over drown you at all. But man, this was a good conversation, man. This was good. Hopefully you guys can see in totality of this conversation, like when we really take it to logic and reasoning. Like I said, it may not be that scriptures are unrealistic. It's just that it's unsettling in a lot of areas. We have to hold the tension. God's standard rules. And God is never asking us to be perfect. He's just asking us to move in obedience. And a part of obedience is process, understanding, and learning one another while learning ourselves, being developed into who he wants us to be. So just some closing thoughts on that. John, someone at my church said sharing the gospel can be uncomfortable for seconds, but can give someone an eternity of life with Jesus. Boy, you better talk that talk, boy. Ooh, boy, you better get that talk. All right. So we got some homework for all you people, man. Shout out Cameron Hibbert in the YouTube chat. Dion, I don't know if you're seeing the chat, but you really have helped me in my life and walk with God. You really are a vessel for God. Really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, Cam, appreciate that, man.
Yeah,
means
man.
The world. That's why we do this. Do what we do.
Yes, sir. Yep. Shout out T Timbo in the Twitch chat. Thank you for answering my questions. I really appreciate it. Absolutely, my friend.
Yeah,
it is.
Thanks for hanging out, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll be back here next Thursday. All right. Same time. We might go live the whole time. Okay. Don't know. But y'all have. Yeah. Okay. So cool. So we'll have another opportunity, man. Y'all get your Ninja memberships then, or even after we go off live. Okay. Got 3-day free trial. After that's $9.99. I promise you getting a whole lot more than your bang for your buck, because you got a beef stream tomorrow, don't you?
We're actually doing a squad stream. So if you like playing Madden, man, doing Trent versus Juice, we got that team play. That'll be fun. And then this weekend we got our UFC event starting 2 p.m. Eastern. Me and Juice main event. Boys getting knocked the fluff out. We got DC and Trent, the co-main. Flam will be in that card again. Flam and Jimmy for that. And then our intro fight will be Fred and a rematch between Fred and Luke going down Saturday, man. So yeah,
I caught that.
That'll be a Ninja only event. So make sure you get your tickets, man, aka your Ninja membership, pay-per-view, baby.
Awesome, man. I love it. So we typically do homework around here. I didn't check the Discord, but I trust that if there was any, I'll see it. Yep. Shout out Baka dropping the homework in the chat. Man, we appreciate you so much for, again, y'all keep participating in that, man. It's for all of us, man, for you to continue to grow in your reading. So we just finished, man, I wish was it 129 or 142, I believe is what it was. So we actually just need to finish the book of Psalms, man. The book of Psalms has 150 chapters, man. So we are like, this is last week. Congrats. Like, first off, the book of Psalms is the longest book in the Bible. So shout out to y'all.
Put in work.
Yeah, put in work. Or at least it has the most chapters. I think it's the longest. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But way to put in the work. So you guys finished the book of Psalms. You're picking up where we're leaving off. Man, hey, Psalms low key is a book you can, I'm going to say you can pick up anywhere. But as you continue to learn scripture, man, that even the book of Psalms tell a story. And so, but man, pick up with us. Psalm chapter 143 is where we're at. And we're just going to finish the book. It's 7 chapters. Read a chapter a day. Come back next week. Drop it in the chat with us. Follow along. We welcome you, man, to share everything that you're getting from it. Your takeaways, what you saw. If it's your first time reading the Bible, you know what I'm saying? You can download a Bible version app, listen to it, all those kinds of things to get better clarity on what you're reading. And for everybody else in the membership, man, drop your homework in the chat. We want to see it. And come back next week ready to share. All right. And I'll be sure to update that when we get off here. All right. So from your boy Grape Juice, Dion, Luke, everybody in the crew, we appreciate you guys so much for kicking it with us for another Thursday. You could have been anywhere and you chose to be here. We can't wait to see you next week. And until then, God first. God bless.